first I wanted to kind of talk about, our company a little bit. So who's ever heard of Paul Mitchell or John Paul Mitchell Systems? What's something you know about it? It's nice. Cool. I'm glad you didn't raise your hand and say, like, it's the worst. Yeah. So, cool.
You should know a lot because we did a project on it.
Oh, cool. So can anyone tell me, like, a little something,
I know they've done a lot to save the environment, and they donated to save 500,000 seals.
Yeah. Cool.
I know that most, if not all, you don't test on animals.
And we were one of the first companies to not do that back before it was, cool to be nice to animals. We were always like, no animal testing ever. Yeah, so a little about the company. It was founded in 1980 by John Paul DeJoria. Have you guys heard of him? So it was founded by John Paul DeJoria and Paul Mitchell. He was the hairdresser. John Paul was more the businessman. Paul Mitchell would, create all these great products. It really just started with the original shampoo 1, shampoo 2, the conditioner. And Paul Mitchell is this really cool guy, lived on a trailer on the beach in Hawaii. Like, that's a life I wouldn't mind having. And would just like cook up and make these products. And I thought that was just so cool. So John Paul went into business with him. They started with $700 in their pocket, really not much else. The iconic black and white packaging on the bottles, it's that because that's all they could afford at the time. They couldn't afford colored packaging. And now it's kind of the trademark thing about our brand. But they started with $700 out of the trunk of their car and just went around to every salon guaranteeing great quality. And that's what kind of brought them to that next level. Is it was always all about the hairdresser and the salon. They were never going to go to customers and say, hey, you don't need a hairdresser because you can do your hair at home or things like that. It's always been about the professional hairdresser. And I think that that's really cool because it's still going strong today. John Paul DeJoria has actually signed a 300-year trust saying that, Paul Mitchell's never going to go public and sell directly to the consumer. It's always going to be all about the hairdresser. So 300 years is a long time, but the reason being for that, if something were to happen to him tomorrow and a family member took over, basically that's what that ensures, is that the company won't just go in a new direction overnight. That's a little about how it got started, and it started with that original black and white Paul Mitchell brand that we're probably all familiar with seeing those bottles, but then now it's branched out into so many different brands. We have just within the world of color, I'll touch on a couple of things with you guys, but we have several color brands. We have the Paul Mitchell black and white brand. We have a tea tree brand, the Awapui brand, Marula. There's a men's brand called Mitch. So there's really just so much under that umbrella of John Paul Mitchell Systems. And if you guys have like a specific question or want us to cover one area that we don't cover today, just let us know at the end and we'll make sure we answer that for you. Cool. So let's talk about color, because that's my job. That's what I'm here for. Raise your hand if you absolutely love color. Okay, raise your hand if you're like, I'm not loving color yet, but I will be one day. Okay, anyone like absolutely hate color and they're afraid of it and they never go near it? Okay, that's good then. Nobody's like completely avoiding it. Cool, so when I was in school though, I would say that I hated color, and the real internal reason for it was that I was afraid of it, because I would think, oh, I'm not artistic, so I'm not going to be good at color, and I would just avoid it at all costs. And I'll tell you guys right now, that's like how you avoid being good at something, is just you never try it, or you're too afraid to fail that you never try it. So if you're nervous about something, whether it's updos or hair cutting or color, just go for it. Like, the best thing you can do is like make a discovery. Like, mess up now on a doll while you're in school. That way you have an understanding of how you can mess up. I run into a lot of times students will be so afraid to cut hair that they just will never try it, and then they're never going to learn, right? So really just go for it and try new things. So with color, first one we're going to talk about is the color. This is our swatch book if you guys want to pass this around and kind of check it out. And then if you want to pass out, I think we should have enough for everybody. If not, 2 people might have to share. But we have our swatch charts for the color. So have you guys gotten to like play around with this yet, or it's just, okay, cool. Not a lot, but okay. So the biggest thing with the color that's different from other brands is the low ammonia that's in it. So the biggest parts of what's actually in a tube of color, it's really easy to remember. Just remember A, B, C, D. So A will stand for your ammonia, B will stand for your base, C is the color pigments, and then D is the developer that you mix it with. So once you can figure out what those components are in a tube of color, it's pretty easy to figure out really any brand or any new color that you might be introduced to. So A for ammonia, the ammonia content in the color is one of the lowest in any permanent color on the market. So essentially what that means is from levels 1 through 10, it's the same amount of ammonia in every tube. Whereas traditionally, it's a little bit more the higher you go up. So a 2 has a little more lift than a 1. A 3 has a little more lift than a 2. Does that make sense? So with this one, it's the same amount at every level. So that being said, you can use this just to deposit or go darker or stay the same level. It doesn't just have to be for lifting purposes. And so sometimes I'll run into, especially in a lot of salons, we'll get the word permanent really stuck in our head, right? Like we want it to last forever. So you guys tell me, how long does permanent hair color last? What's the general time you would tell someone? What was it? 4 to 6 weeks, right? What's the longevity of like a demi-permanent color? It can be like 2 to 4 depending on the canvas, but technically a lot of manufacturers will say 4 to 6 weeks. You know, so if permanent's 4 to 6 weeks and demi-permanent's 4 to 6 weeks, what's the difference there?
Permanent is anchored into the hair, and the demi-permanent isn't penetrating the cuticle as far.
Perfect. So I like that word anchored. Permanent's anchored more into the hair. Also, what does permanent do that a demi-permanent might not be able to? Lift, right. So when you think permanent, try not to, you know, keep this in your head or put it in the guest's head. Permanent, lasting, my hair is going to be this color forever, right? So we know that if somebody goes and washes their hair with something that they got at the dollar store, that permanent color could only last a day, right? You could use temporary hair color, like Halloween hairspray, on the wrong head of hair, and it could last until they have to cut their hair out, right? So try not to think permanent in their hair forever, lasting forever. Think permanent like it's a permanent change that you can't go back from. Once you've lifted that color out of their hair, their natural color, you're not able to get that back. You can put a matching artificial color on top of it, but they're not able to get that melanin that's in their hair back once it's been oxidized. Does that make sense? Cool. So that's the biggest thing about, you know, permanent colors. So I run into a lot of time people wanting to use permanent for everything that they do, but how often does somebody come into the salon with virgin hair, would you guys think? Just one time, right? And then they never have virgin hair again. So, you know, if their hair is already lifted or already colored, sometimes it's wise to go with a more demi-permanent option because, you know, why introduce more ammonia into the situation than you have to, right? So the cool thing about Palmachil, the color, the one you guys are looking at right now, is it's such low ammonia, you can use it as a demi-permanent or a semi-permanent. So I really love that. So before I was full-time on the road, as I am now for Palmachil, I shared a studio with a couple of my other hairdresser friends, and I had this like little tiny space, and all I did was color. So I couldn't carry, you know, 5 different brands. I just didn't have the room for it. So I chose the color as my permanent brand because it functions as a semi and a demi, and you can intermix those levels together and just kind of carry every other one. So that's like a couple reasons, you know, why that might be the good choice. Also, the gray coverage for this one is just superior to anything else on the market because it's such low ammonia, but just such great pigment saturation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that gray coverage series. But yeah, that's the biggest thing is really just that low ammonia at every level, whereas traditionally it's a little higher, the higher you go up. Cool, any questions for that one? Before we get into like how to mix it, yeah?
Yeah, you said A for ammonia, D for base.
C is your color pigments. And then D is developer, yep. Yeah. So who can tell me what the base of Palmachil the color is? It's on your swatch chart if you want to cheat, yeah.
Like a definition of base?
Or, well, yeah, what would you define a base as?
The underlying pigment in the color.
So we'll talk about that in a sec, but I mean more like the actual product itself. Yeah, that's a good point though, because you do need to know about that. So the base of the color is beeswax. So that's why it has a nice thick consistency. So you're able to mix this with either a clear or a cream developer, depending on what kind of consistency that you want. But the beeswax base is what makes the hair really soft and shiny. So the hair is always going to be in great condition after you use this one. Cool, so that's what the base is. And then your color pigments, so you have oxidative dyes and direct dyes. Can anyone tell me what the difference is between those?
Oxidative is with peroxide, and direct dyes are used applied to the hair in the color side.
Perfect. Anyone have anything to add to that? I thought I saw another hand. But maybe she said it all. So your oxidative dyes need to be mixed with a developer. So when you have a permanent color or an oxidative color, think of that dye molecule as being really, really small, right? And then you add developer, you introduce oxygen into the situation, and then that color molecule grows to be almost 200 or 300 times its original size. So you ever notice you might mix something up in the bowl and you're thinking that's not the color that I'm going for. It'll usually be like a beige or a purple when you might be going for red or brown. So by the time it oxidizes and oxygen is introduced into the situation, it turns into the color that you see. So that's what an oxidative dye will do. It'll start out really small, so it's small enough to get into the hair, and then it kind of sets up camp while it's in there and changes into that color that you see. Whereas a direct dye is already a really large molecule. So a lot of direct dyes will be those fashion tones that you see, like if somebody wants green hair or blue hair, pink hair. A lot of times those are those larger molecules. So that's why it can be really hard to keep in the hair because it's such a large molecule. But then also once it's in there, it can be really hard to get out of the hair. It gets kind of stuck in there. But anyways, with the color, it's an oxidative dye. So it's really easy to remove from the hair should they want to change it later. And then D stands for your developer. So with Paul Mitchell, like I said, we have a cream and we have a clear developer. And when you're mixing it with the color, it's really just preference. It's not going to be any difference in the outcome. When you mix it with a cream developer, it's going to be really thick and almost a little bit stickier. So you might like that if you're using it with foils. It's just going to stick right to that foil and it's not going anywhere. But let's say you're doing more of like a retouch and you want it to just kind of glide through the hair. Then mixing it with the clear developer makes it a thinner texture. So it's really just about preference. You'll get the same end results with it. It's just whatever you prefer to work with. Cool. Any questions? All right. So if you open up your swatch chart, you have all of your different shade choices laid out up here, and that's what's in the swatch book that was going around too. But if you check out this little grid, your formulation steps. So always refer back to this. You know, even if you've been doing the same formula on someone forever, always refer back to this and always think about like, well, why am I putting this on their hair? Is there something better that I could do? Maybe they want to change it up. Always refer back to that. So step 1, determine the natural level and their percentage of gray. Why might that be important to do? Yeah. Kind of like figure out where you're starting from, right? A lot of times it'll be especially in the guest's head, maybe if they've been using box dye or things like that for years, that, okay, if I put this tube of color on everyone, it'll look the same, right? But if we took a tube of 7N and put it on everyone in this room, is everyone going to look like that 7N swatch? No, everyone has a different canvas, right? Like if you took, you know, a bright red marker and wrote across a white piece of paper and a brown piece of paper, it's not going to look the same, right? So you have to figure out what your starting level is because that's going to contribute to that end result. It's not just like, you know, you take a tube of color and it magically turns their hair that color. What they have already existing is part of it as well. So you got to figure out their natural level. And then you have your levels 1 through 10. You guys know 1 being the darkest, 10 being the lightest. If you look at your color map right here, I'll tell you guys the biggest thing you can do is just always refer back to your color map. Really, really instill that right now, and you'll have a really easy time with color in the future. I can't tell you how many salons I go into where they're having color issues and color questions, and they'll stop me and be like, but don't bring out the color wheel on me because I'm very advanced. And I'm like, well, you're asking me why when you're putting blue on yellow, is it turning green, right? So always go back to that color wheel. It's honestly, truly the answer for anything that you might run into. You know, sometimes we overcomplicate it, and it really can be broken down into that simplest building block. So on that little outer ring of your color map right here, that's your level system. So you can find what the underlying pigment of each level is right there. So step 2 is identify your target level, so where you're going. So for example, you know, if someone in here, we determine that they're naturally a level 5 and they want to be a level 7, right? And then we're going to figure out the dominant pigment at that target level. So what is the dominant pigment? You kind of touched on it before. Orange. So the dominant pigment of a level 7 is orange. Is it like neon bright Crayola marker orange? No, so don't be expecting that. But it is an orange pigment that's underneath there. So that's really important to know because every level is going to look a little bit different underneath. So if you were to take, I'm just using 7N because it's kind of just right in the middle of everything. But let's say you took a 7N and put that on their hair. Their hair is naturally going to just bring some orange into what's going on. Orange is going to be there no matter what. So then it's just like you're mixing brown with orange. It's not going to look like a natural neutral brown. Does that make sense? So what would you have to do if they wanted it to really look like that neutral swatch? Right. So blue, right across the color wheel from orange, that's the complementary color. A great way to remember that, your complementary colors. So what is orange made out of? Yellow and red, right? So what is it missing to complete it? Blue, right? So if you always just break it down to those primaries, it's really easy to figure out like what the missing piece is of that. It's not just like, oh, well, orange and blue look nice together. Blue is the counterpart that's missing from orange as far as primary colors go. So, for red, what is missing from red if we needed to make it a neutral color? As far as green or yellow and blue, right? So if somebody is really, really red or they're always pulling warm, have you guys ever heard that before? I always pull red or I always pull warm. Have you heard that? But if we're just putting a brown on them, then you're just mixing brown and red, right? So you need to introduce some green into the situation. Sometimes that can be a little scary because you don't want to necessarily turn their hair green unless I come to see you and I want you to turn my hair green. But just a little bit of it really just neutralizes that red. That way it comes out looking more like a neutral color. That's where you guys have a lot of creative control, and that's why it's so important to go see a hairdresser if you're looking for consistent end results, because they might not know, what their dominant pigment is or what they're going to lift to or something like that.
So, like, if you were taking a 7N and they did pull, like, warmer, would you be able to just, like, take a little bit of, like, an ash color and just mix it in with that?
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So all of these colors are intermixable. And what's nice, because they all have the same amount of ammonia, when you're intermixing them, you're not going to be messing with the amount of lift. It just relies on the developer for the lift. So with some color lines that are out there, like if you mixed, a 7 and a 9 together, with this you're just going to get a true 8 right in the middle. But because that, in other color lines, because that 9 might have a lot more ammonia, it won't be exactly right in the middle. So that's what makes this really easy to formulate. You can intermix any of them together, and it's going to be pretty consistent and reliable. So you'll figure out that target level. So like we determined, if they're starting out as a 5 and they want to be a 7, orange is going to be part of what you do no matter what. So you have to decide, okay, do I want to enhance that or do I want to neutralize that? Or do I want to just kind of embrace it? So if you wanted to enhance or intensify that, you might want to use something that's right in this color range, right? Like a WC or an RO, anything that's listed in that little pie slice. If you think, okay, I don't want to see any orange, you've got to go right across the way. And then what's our option in that blue category? An ash, right? So that's our blue-based option for this one. If you go right up here, then we'll find, okay, I can just use a 7A. Is their hair going to look like this kind of grayish color? No, because you're putting it on top of orange. Okay, so I try to tell people not to rely too heavily on the swatches. It's more just a tool for you guys to see what the tone is. You never want to just put this in a client's lap and say, like, okay, what color do you want to be, right? Because it's not going to be the same on everyone. You can use it as a tool to get an idea of what kind of tones they might like, but just because, they like that 10A swatch doesn't mean that 10A is what we're going to use on them. Does that make sense? Cool. So use your swatch, your swatch book as a tool, but always make sure that you're thinking about, their underlying pigment and formulating for that. So refer to your color map, determine if you're going to neutralize or intensify that pigment. So right here, it kind of explains that. So like we said, neutralizing, you're going to go across the color wheel, kind of complete that missing primary color from there. Or if you want to intensify or enhance it, use something that's right in that range. Cool? Sound good? Any questions? You guys are so quiet. All right, so then right here is your kind of linear version of that. So you've got your color wheel. And then right here is your more of a chart that's like a map. So that's going to break down what has brown in it and what doesn't. So when might you want to know if something has brown in it? What's that good for? Yeah, exactly. So if let's say you have a guest come in and they really want red hair, they really like that 6R swatch, but they've got 50% gray. Like we said, if you put a red marker across a white piece of paper and a brown piece of paper, is it going to come out all even? No, what'll happen to those gray hairs? Yeah, they're gonna absorb a little more. They're gonna be like pink, right? So there's no backbone in there. There's no pigment in there at all. So you need to add some brown into your formula in order to get gray coverage. So what's nice about the color is a lot of them do already have brown built into it, so you don't really have to create your own. You can just figure out which one is the right one to use. So right at the top here is the N Plus series. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's a dedicated gray coverage series. That's how you're going to get the absolute most coverage out of what you're doing. Otherwise, anything with an N in it, it's going to cover for you. So you have 3 different brown options. The NN, that's a gray brown. So that's kind of more like a true neutral. So a lot of times when you are working with a color, the N series might not be a true neutral because usually people don't really want their hair to truly be neutral. Because a real neutral color is kind of like a grayish, muddy tone. It's kind of like, it's not warm, it's not cool, it's kind of just right in the middle. So that's why a lot of N series tend to be just slightly on the warmer side, just like somebody's natural hair growing out of their head might be. And then you have your N option, so that's your natural brown. Remember, it's natural, not neutral. And then the NB is your natural beige, so right here. So that one's going to be more of like your neutral beige, natural kind of sandy brown tone. So that one can be a little bit warmer as well. And then this second little block of them right there, that's all of your colors that have brown blended into them. So all of those have a brown base, meaning they're safe to just throw on someone with gray hair, and you're not going to have that situation where it stains those hairs a different tone. So your NA series, that's going to be a green with a brown base. So when you look at that swatch, it's not like a bright, they're not going to look like the Grinch or anything like that. It's really just like a nice natural ash. So you need that because a lot of times when people are pulling red or warm, they'll go straight for an ash. But what happens when you're mixing a gray and they're really pulling, or when you're mixing a blue and they're really pulling red? Yeah, you're not really neutralizing that, right? It really needs green. You're kind of missing that yellow part of ash. So the natural ash series is really meant for neutralizing your red. And then it's actually kind of growing into a trend, like more of like a khaki type of green hair that I'm seeing a lot more. Like we just had like a matte series launch. I haven't really seen it out personally, but that's what I've been hearing from everyone. I'm like, okay, it's better than silver at least, right? That's like was last year's thing. Who knows what the next thing will be. But you can use that, yeah, you can use that to neutralize your red or enhance like more of a natural type of ash tone. And then if we keep going down, your PN, so that's a natural with blue violet. So when might you want something with blue violet? Yeah, so if they've got blue violet, that's when they're lifting and they're really yellow orange or really gold. So that's a pretty common place for people to be when they want to be blonde, or maybe they've been coloring their hair before, because they're not just going to lift all the way to that white blonde the first time if they've got previous color most of the time. A lot of times you'll get stuck in that golden kind of yellow orange phase. So that blue violet is the perfect way to neutralize that. And it's got a brown background to it, so you can get some pretty good coverage. Or it's great if you want to kind of enhance that coolness in their hair, if people are looking for more of a cooler brunette or blonde, which has been pretty popular lately. So that whole second block, that's everything that's got brown in it. And then that last one, that's everything that's just a pure tone with no brown background to it at all. So if you're looking for the brightest red or, you know, the coolest silver blonde, that's how you're going to create that. Cool? Does that make sense how you found those? And, you know, you don't have to remember everything. Like, we're going to go over a lot of info today. As long as you know what your resources are and where to find those answers, that's the biggest thing. So don't worry too much about, like, memorizing all the information. Just know where your tools are if you get in a situation you don't quite remember, like, where you can go and reference that. Cool? Question? Oh, okay. So that is your color map and formulating with it. So then we have an N plus series. So this is a series that's really just meant for gray coverage. It's meant to be mixed into any of those other colors. So if you were to just use it by itself, it's not going to melt their hair, nothing crazy is going to happen, but it's kind of just a flat tone. It's not very reflective and shiny if you use it by itself. So a lot of times guys will like this to cover their gray because they might not want that fresh, I just colored my hair kind of look. But it's really meant to be mixed into any of the rest of them. So using it by itself, it's just kind of a matte, not really shiny finish. So anyways, what you'll do is you'll mix that into your formula, and a great way to remember is just however much gray they have, that's how much you need in your formula. So if they've only got 25% of gray, you just need 25% of your formula to be that N+. There's a little chart down here that breaks it down a little bit more. Yeah?
If you use the gray coverage
Mm-hmm.
Could you, to add shine, could you do a clear over it, or could you do the PM shines on top of it?
Yeah, definitely. So, and you could even mix it in with like the N and still get that same amount of shine. Yeah, it's more that it's just like, it's very neutral. It won't have any warmth to it. So what's unique about these, the N Plus series, so for example, like the G series, everything, all of these levels have a gold background. And it's the same for the rest of them. Like everything in that level for the ash series, they're all that same amount of ash. What's a little bit different that makes the N Plus series so successful in covering gray is each level has a little bit of a different background to it because that's what you need at that level. So up into the 8 and the 9, that's more of a blue-violet background because that's, you know, the tone that you're trying to neutralize that gold and that yellow at that level. When you get down into the 5 and the 4 and the 3, it's more of a greenish type of background because you're going to be neutralizing more of a red tone. So that's what makes it pretty successful. You really have to go and use exactly that level. And I'll tell you guys, a lot of people will look at the swatch. Let's say they're covering a level 7, so they really need that 7 and plus. I've run into a lot of times people looking at that swatch and saying, oh, that's really dark. I don't know. I'm going to use an 8. And then they'll be like, why didn't it cover? So don't let the swatches stress you out. Remember that these swatches are just a tool to see that tone, and these are very matte and can look very dark on their own. So don't be freaked out if the swatch looks like it's a little too dark for what you're doing. Its whole job is just to go in and cover gray. You're not going to dull down your formula by mixing that N plus into it. It just goes in and covers gray. I think of it like unflavored gelatin. It kind of just takes on whatever you're mixing it with. So however much gray you've got, that's how much you've got to mix into it, and that's where you'll find that information down here. And then you've got your processing chart right here. So this is how you're going to figure out what you're mixing it with to get the end results you're looking for. So most of the time, this will be used as a permanent color, like for your root retouches or for lifting or things like that. So for permanent results, that's this first block right up here. For 1 to 2 levels of lift or deposit, you'll use your 20 volume. So 20 volume is probably the most common one used with this one. And then 2 to 3 levels of lift, it'll be 30 volume. So why do you guys think that it doesn't say, okay, 1 level of lift 20, 2 levels of lift 30? Why do you think it gives you a range, like 1 to 2, 2 to 3? Yeah, it varies depending on the hair. Why might that be? Like, what could be different? Their porosity. So their porosity, what else? The density of their hair, right? The texture of their hair, all of that comes into play. So it's really not one size fits all. So, you know, I've got really coarse hair, meaning each individual piece is a lot thicker. Somebody might have really, really fine hair. So when you've got coarse hair, think of it as like a really big room that you have to fill, right? And then fine hair is almost like a really skinny little room, like a closet. So if you think of like a tube of 7N as 7 people. If we had 7 people in this big room, we could all be kind of spread out, right? But if you had to fit 7 people in a closet, it's really condensed and everyone's packed together. So think of pigment like that. If you've put a tube of 7N on someone with really coarse hair, it's almost like it's all spread out. So you might be able to see their underlying pigment. Hence, that person says they always pull warm because it might not be enough coverage for them. Whereas with really fine hair, that pigment's all squished together in that really skinny strand of hair. So what do you think they might see? If that pigment's, yeah, they might think it's too dark because that pigment's packed so close together. So that's why it kind of gives you that range. You know, for coarser hair, you might need a little bit more power to clear out, you know, their dominant pigment that's in there. For finer hair, you might want to formulate half a shade lighter just so that that doesn't happen, so they don't think that they're too dark. And then your 3 levels of lift is your 40 volume, and then your high lifts. So those are right along the top here, that second row down. High lifts are your colors that are going to give you up to 4 levels of lift. So it's just a little bit more ammonia in there. So that's really only meant to be used on virgin hair, because if their hair is already colored, it's not going to give you any more additional lift. Okay, so those are great for your root retouches, or if you're doing highlights on someone and they don't have previous color, that's what those are great for, and you'll mix those with 40 volume. And then down at the bottom, if you're going to be going for demi-permanent hair color, so that's going to be 5 volume on damp hair for 20 minutes. And then for semi-permanent results, you're only looking for about 3 weeks of longevity, 10 volume for 10 minutes. So remember that with the demi or the semi-permanent, you're not going to get that amount of lift that's in there. But it's great because you could formulate it to refresh their ends if maybe you're doing a root retouch or something like that. Anything you want to add to those? Cool. All right. So then as far as your mixing and your application, so, oh yeah.
Why would you apply the semi-permanent and the semi-permanent on damp hair versus the rest?
So the water kind of acts as a little bit of a filler, so it evens out that porosity and it won't get into the hair quite as much. Okay. And it just kind of will dilute it a little bit. So a lot of times people will like to use that 10 volume on dry hair to get kind of right in the middle of being permanent and being that demi-permanent. But a situation where that might be good is if you lighten someone, let's say, you know, they're wanting to be blonde and you lightened them, but they really only got to that orangey kind of yellow-orange phase. You're able to use something that's at a lower level, you know, whereas a lot of times you might go straight for one of the toners. Hair really needs to be at a level 10 for those. But let's say they get stuck at level 8 and they want to be cooler. You can go in and use like an 8 CB with 10 volume and you know you're not lifting, but you just shampooed them. You can use that on damp hair.
So why do you use a stronger developer on a semi-permanent? Like you're
Because
using 10 volume on semi-permanent, but you're using a 5 volume on the demi.
Because it's that shorter time. It's really just in the timing for that one. Yep. So 10 minutes is that semi-permanent one. So you want that power, but for a really short amount of time. And then that demi, you can let it sit on a little bit longer. Yep. Any other questions? Cool. And then that last one is your ultra toners that we touched on. So if you look at the swatches for the ultra toners and the high lift, they're identical. So really just remember the biggest difference is the high lifts. Those will give you 4 levels of lift on virgin hair. The ultra toners are just meant to deposit on blonde hair. Those aren't going to give you any lift. So the swatches will look the same. A lot of times guests will look at it and be like, well, which one? I can't tell. They're the same piece of hair. It's done on white and synthetic hair. But just remember that high lift will give you that 4 full levels, and then the ultra toners, those are just going to deposit. So if you've done highlights on someone or lightened their hair and they're at that level 9 or 10, which means that they're really more of that yellow to pale yellow tone, that's when you can go for those ultra toners. Like the UTP and the UTA are probably the most popular lately as people want to be kind of more of a cooler tone of blonde. Cool. And those will be on damp hair. Think of it right after you rinse out, you know, their lightener or whatever you just did to their hair. You can put that on damp hair and really just kind of watch it develop. You know, the processing time's 10 to 20 minutes, so just kind of keep an eye on it. If hair was just lightened, it can be really porous and grab to color a little bit. So just keep an eye on it and then rinse it out whenever you need to. Cool. Any questions? Cool. All right, and then on the back, you have your pre-treatment chart right here. So this is really, really important, and I'll tell you, like, especially in the Northeast area that we live in, a lot of people have well water. Who in here has well water at home? A lot of us, right? So that can be a huge buffer to getting the color to do what you're trying to make it do, right? If they've got mineral buildup, or, you know, if they're on any kind of medication, on any kind of crazy diet, so much comes out in your hair that you wouldn't really think of, and it can just stop the color from doing what it's trying to do with any color line. So it's really important to give them a really good pre-treatment, especially the first time, you know, maybe a guest has never been to you, maybe they have box color in their hair, people are washing their hair less and less these days, so maybe they've got a week's worth of dry shampoo in there. All of that can inhibit the color from getting in and doing its job. So by doing a really good pre-treatment, it's like a guarantee that your color is going to turn out fine. And now if you've had someone that's coming to you for a long time and you know that their formula is good, you might not need to. But if you have a guest that comes in and you just can't quite get their formula quite right, this might be a great option for it, especially if they have well water in this area. So that would be doing a shampoo 2 or a shampoo 3. So we'll touch on our take-home products in a little bit, but who's familiar with shampoo 2 or 3? Anyone? So what's the difference between them? Yeah. And then what's shampoo 2 good for? Yeah, so they're both clarifying. So shampoo 2, think of shampoo 2 as your kind of like middle and between, and then shampoo 3 is your really intense cleanser. So shampoo 2 is going to kind of clean the outside of the hair. Maybe they have just really oily hair. Maybe they have a lot of product buildup. Shampoo 3 kind of cleans the inside of the hair. So if they've got mineral deposit, if they've got, you know, color staining their hair, chlorine, well water, anything like that, shampoo 3 is going to take that out. Cool, so kind of figure out which one they might need for that. A lot of times shampoo 2 is enough, but if, like I said, if they've got well water and their hair's not coming out the way you're anticipating it, shampoo 3 will get it done. And you know, you're not wanting it to be like a long, drawn out experience shampooing their hair. It should be just like a 10-second shampoo. Just clean their hair. You don't want to massage their scalp at all before you do a color service, because then that's when they could, you know, get a little itchy or have a reaction. You're really just going in and cleansing the hair, not massaging their scalp, just getting that product off of there, right? And then you'll towel dry them, just get most of that moisture out, blast them dry, and then you'll put your color on. So, you know, if you're taking your time with it, it can add an unnecessary amount of time to your service, but if you kind of get your setup right, it can really only add an extra 10 or 15 minutes. I know what a lot of people will like to do is just shampoo them really quick, put them under a hood dryer, and then they'll go and get their color and get all set up so that the timing works out for it. But it's important that you do that, especially since kind of an old school rule would be, and with other color lines, the rule could be, okay, go to the hairdresser with dirty hair, right? Have you guys ever heard that? So, yeah, especially for lightning, because you almost get like a little shield or a little buildup. Well, this is such a low amount of ammonia that you don't really have to worry about it damaging your scalp or your hair. All of that buildup could kind of be in the way of it doing its job. So it's a very, very gentle color where you don't need to follow that rule with this one. You want to have clean hair for this color. And then if somebody comes in and they have really damaged hair or really porous hair, pre-treating it can be a way to make sure it comes out evenly. So if they've got really porous ends and healthy hair at the top of their head, their color may not come out even from scalp to ends. So by doing a treatment beforehand, whether it's supercharged treatment, Kera Triplex, we have a couple different options that we can talk about. Doing that before your color service just ensures that that color comes out evenly from scalp to ends, or what you're anticipating it to be. Cool? All right. So then your post-treatment, so that's what you're going to be rinsing that hair out with. So we have a special dedicated shampoo that was made for the color. Because it's such a thick beeswax base, if you use just a really mild, gentle shampoo, it might not be enough to remove that residue. Also, anytime you have dye in the hair, you want to completely shut down the cuticle and stop that oxidation process. Or else they could go home and wash their hair and feel like it's all running out in the shower. Have you guys ever experienced that? So when you use, there's a post-color shampoo, there's a picture of it right here. It's a little confusing because if you don't read the label, it kind of looks like the regular take-home color shampoo. But if you read it, it's called your post-color shampoo, and that's really only for when you're rinsing out color. You would never use that at home. It would just be a little too intense at home. So what that is used for is when you're rinsing out that color service, it removes all of the residue from that beeswax base, all of those extra dye molecules, and it has phenyl extract in it. It works as a little peroxide scavenger. So it goes and gets rid of all that extra developer, anything that might irritate their scalp, and just stops the oxidation process. So it prevents their hair from fading. Whereas if you use something really mild when you rinse out the hair, it can almost like think of the cuticle as like a door that you could leave open for all of that pigment to start fading out really quickly. Does that make sense? Cool. So that's what you want to use when you're rinsing out your color. And then as far as your conditioner, so a good thing to do is use whatever conditioner you're going to recommend that they take home with them. That way they can get a sense of like how it feels in their hair and smells and everything like that. But if it's somebody like you're doing a redhead or a fashion tone and you're concerned it's going to fade if it's like a really tricky color, the detangler, one of our conditioners, is one of the best things you can use to rinse out that hair color. It has a pH of 3 and it just closes down that cuticle, makes their hair really soft again. And prevents that color from fading. So I really recommend that, but let's say you're recommending that maybe they buy curls shampoo and conditioner. That's when you might want to try that curls conditioner so they can get a sense of how that feels. So it'll be different for everyone, but the detangler is a really great one if you're not sure which one you want to go to. Cool. That's really the overview for the color. You have all your different shades up there. Just remember, you have to check what has brown in it and what doesn't. They're listed right here, and then it also does say right at the top what the background of that color is and what the underlying pigment is. Cool? So you can use it as a permanent, demi, or semi-permanent. No questions? All right. So then the next one is Color XG. This one right here. And I'll pass that around for you guys to check out the swatches. And then I have these guys too. You can even keep these out at the tables, but this one has a little of everything in it. This right here is your Color XG. So you guys can keep these like out with you to check it out as we go. And then this has the color that we just talked about. You guys can keep it on the table.
I already have pink in my hair.
Don't have this. All we had is one color.
Oh,
We're
pop
not doing
XG.
this because we decided to do the shines for
Okay.
now instead.
So did you mean
So we mean
like the fashion tones? Okay.
I'm looking at, like, wait, we have all these.
This one?
Yeah, we have to just start with just
No, that
one
totally
for
makes
now.
sense. So you said XG. I thought that's what you meant. It's the
Oh,
color XG. Okay. I don't care if they hang on to them, but do you want me to take them back?
no, they can look at them.
Okay. So I'll go into this one and then PM Shines too. That was, yeah, definitely. Okay. Or let's hang on to these for a second. All right, so what I just passed out to you guys is the color XG. So there's the color, and then there's the color XG, which just released, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. So XG stands for your next generation of color. So what we did when we released this, we didn't have a color line in Europe. So, you know, we're an American company, we're all throughout America, and we have our products all over the world, but we didn't have a color line. In Europe, there's different regulations for how you have to make things, and people are used to different systems over there. So this is created in Italy, and that's where we released it. And then what happened is all of our educators went over there to train people on it, and they were like, what the heck, why don't we have this here in America? And then they brought it here, and then it confused everyone that was carrying our other color line, because they were like, oh no, is this going away? So the thing about this, just kind of keep it in the back of your head, it's just a different option. So if there's a salon out there that's used to more of a European color system, where that, you know, that developer or the ammonia rather gets higher at every level, this is that system. So we have 2 different permanent lines as options. For while you're in school, the color, that first one we talked about, is really the perfect thing for you to have because you can use it in so many different situations. So it's a great one to learn on. But I'll let you hang on to these swatches just to kind of keep in mind, you know, what else is out there, because it's really useful to have an understanding of different color lines. When you go into the salon, you'll be that much more valuable to them. So that's our European color line. And then that first one we talked about is the one that you guys will be using in school. Cool? So let's talk about PM Shines, and then we'll go into Pop XG, which is our fashion tone. So if you want to pass out PM Shines. I know, I brought lots of treats. I'm so glad. Any questions on that one though? Yeah, you formulate differently and the dyes that are in it are a little different. But it's just about preference. So yeah, a lot of salons that do more like reds and high lifts prefer this line. Or if they're used to a more European line, they like this one. A lot of people that like something like reliable, easy to formulate, they'll go with the color. So it's just preference. If you want to add anything too, just like jump in, interrupt me.
Have it all down. Just like coming up so naturally. You have a good flow.
Oh, thank you.
And then this leads to the little energy that you're adding.
With other people, yeah. All right, so what you guys have in front of me now is PM Shines, that blue brochure. So PM Shines is your translucent demi-permanent color. So this one's always going to be demi-permanent, meaning you're never going to have any lift with this color. So that's good to keep in mind, because if you have lift and you're just looking to do a top coat over someone, That's where you might get a situation called hot roots. Have you guys ever heard of that or experienced that? So it's because that virgin hair, well, that'll happen because that virgin hair is like ready to go. There's nothing, lifting that prior, but the rest of the hair is already colored. So what happens is those roots can become a lot warmer. So this is never going to be any lifting action on the rest of the hair. So it's just, this is one of my favorite products, honestly, that really anyone can use, and you can put on every client. So this is your translucent. What does translucent mean? You can see through it, right? It's not an opaque finish. So this is great because you could put it on someone, like if we put this on Crystal's hair where she's got some lighter pieces towards the end, it's not going to kind of like wipe that out and bring it all to one level. It'll pick up differently all over it. So it's nice because you can use this as a toner. You could use this to go darker, stay the same level, and then there's even a clear option if you're just looking for, the hydrating benefits of it to use as a top coat. So you want to think of this as kind of like sunscreen for your hair. It has UV absorbers in it, which, UV rays is one of the main things that fades hair color. So it's like a little protection for that. So you can use that clear top coat just to prevent, their color from fading. Also, it's really moisturizing and hydrating. It has soy protein in it, so that's what gives the hair a really silky, soft feel after you use this. Has anyone ever had this in their hair? Okay, so wait until you do. You have?
I did it yesterday, and I just have to add a comment.
Yeah.
How dark. We used the 9V on her, on Leah's blog.
Yeah.
It came out gorgeous, but it scared me.
Oh, the actual product? Yeah.
Put it on. and then you
Definitely.
rinse it off. So fair warning, when you do put it on, it looks much darker than it actually
Especially like the threes, they look really dark. So yeah, good.
especially on blonde hair.
Well, because some demi-permanent gels like really do end up being that dark. So yeah, good to know. So yeah, don't be freaked out if the actual product is developing a really dark color. It's a very translucent, nice top coat. Yeah, no, you're fine. Cool. Nice. So great thing to use as a filler to repigment with as well. So it's just very hydrating. It's a really nice top coat. If somebody's got curly hair, this is one of the best things that you can use for them. If you have curly hair that kind of starts to straighten out, a lot of times it's because of damage or it's lacking moisture. So this is a great product to kind of push a little bit of life back into it. Also, when curly hair starts to frizz, it's because it's kind of reaching out into the air for moisture. So, so it'll be reaching out into the air for moisture. So the more you can moisturize that hair, the less frizz that you'll have. So this is awesome in the winter to prevent static. It's really just a great thing to have on anyone, and it can work on top of anyone else's hair color that you already have because there's no lifting. So it's the type of thing, it's only a 20-minute service, so you could really add it as an additional service for almost any guest that you have. Do you want to pass that guy around? Cool. We can keep this out there too if you guys want to look as we go. So formulating for this one's actually really easy. Everything has a brown background to it with the exception of the red series. So that means it's pretty safe to kind of throw on anyone's head and you're not gonna, have any weird tones to it. So it's not meant for gray coverage. You can get a little bit of gray blending with this one, but it's really sheer. So that's ideal for someone that maybe they want to grow out their gray. They don't want that line of demarcation anymore. This is a great product for that because it's just going to kind of stain those grays and then gracefully fade out of them. So this isn't really your go-to if they're looking to completely cover it up. But since they all have a brown base to them, you're not going to be worried about it taking like a funky tone on that gray hair. Yep. Yep, it's a demi. Yep. So everything has brown in it, and then on your color wheel that you have there, you can see what the base is or the background of each one. So you have your warmer tones, you've got your browns, but then those cooler tones, like the ash series is really popular for people that want that gray silver tone as well. You can intermix any of them, and you'll notice that most of them, except for that N series, come in levels 3, 6, and 9. So if you wanted to create those in-betweens, you'll just add ½ ounces of clear to get that in-between, and the how-to is right on your paper chart. So if, let's say, you wanted to make a 4R, and that doesn't exist, you can add ½ an ounce of that clear into the 3R, and it'll just dilute it and soften it. And then what you're going to mix this with for developer, it has its very own dedicated developer called Paul Mitchell Processing Liquid. So there's a picture of it right in your brochure, so it's not meant to be mixed with 5 volume or 10 volume or anything like that. Mixing it with that processing liquid gives it the right gel consistency and texture. If you mix it with something else, it can be really drippy and runny and not a great situation. So you're going to mix this with the processing liquid, equal parts. Same for the color. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's always equal parts. And then you're just going to give it a little whisk, and it'll turn into more of a gel texture, so it's easy to apply without making a mess. So you can either apply this in a bowl with a brush, or you can use a bottle for it.
The high lift is 2 to 1 though, right?
Yes.
In
So
the color?
in the color, yep. So going back to that high lift, you have the option to either mix it equal parts or 2 to 1. Doing it 2 to 1, you get a lot more lift. Doing it equal parts, you get more tone.
So when you say you get a lot more lift, if you're looking for that 4 level, you know, if you're using the highest with a 4 level, you go 40 volume. What is it going to give you to double that 40 volume at that point?
So when they're on that fine line of being like a natural level 6 and a level 7, it's kind of like when they're either a brunette or a blonde. So if they're more on that level 6 side, that's when you might want to do the double, because you know that you'll need a little bit more lifting power.
So when you say that, is it going to
Yeah.
talk about a half a shade, close to a shade?
About a half a shade, yeah. And it's more like if you do that equal parts, you'll get more of that tone. So if the guest likes that HLP swatch and it's really important that they get that platinum silvery tone, that's when you might want to do that equal parts.
To break through that tone so it doesn't
It'll-
get stuck in that stage.
Yep, exactly. It'll kind of dilute the tone.
We ended up doing she came in to get a color, and we ended up using the Highland Ash, I think.
Mm.
Highland Ash. And
We doubled the 40.
we doubled the developer.
Mm.
I think we processed for like 45 minutes.
Mhm.
That was the first one. It came out beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was exciting.
And she did such a great job applying it.
Yeah.
The regrowth was quite exceptional. Like,
Yeah.
She's been asking me to do
so
her.
she actually really did a great job in doing that sort of mid shaft.
Yep.
And then going back and doing her regrowth.
Perfect.
It was great because it was a little tricky. It wasn't just regrowth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
She had color on her end.
It was like the regrowth.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect.
Her ends were already like a level 9, I would say.
Okay.
So I had to like wait to put it on the ends completely.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressed though.
Nice. Good.
And you know, now, so let me ask you that on that note, PM shines. So could you have probably just put the 9V on her ends?
Yeah. A lot of people will like to.
Yes, I was a little worried.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, it's really it's your choice. So the color can be used as that mid shaft kind of refresher. But then PM shines is great if they've got highlights and you kind of want to still see that dimension. Yeah. So a lot of people like to put this on while the roots are processing and have it just match up. And then you won't get that color buildup too. So that's another thing too. If you're just using permanent on top of permanent, especially with your redheads, it starts to get kind of a dull color, or it just gets darker and darker. If you're just always, like if somebody comes in and their formula is 5N, and you always just put 5N scalp to ends on them every time, what are their ends going to look like after a couple months? It's really dark, right? And if it's a permanent color with a lot of ammonia, the color's got low ammonia, but if you're using one with a lot of ammonia, the ends kind of get like blown open a little bit. They get really fuzzy, and it's hard to make them lay down smooth. So if you don't have to use a permanent color, that's when you might want to go to PM Shines because it's so gentle.
Okay, no, sorry.
It's fine.
Crazy with this stuff. But so hypothetically, if you have that color on her
Mhm.
regrowth and somewhat down the shaft, and you put shines, the intermixing of those two does nothing.
Right. So do you guys get what she's asking? So if you've got retouch on someone, yeah. So think of it like you don't want to mix them, but they can kind of like bump heads, and that's okay to do. Right, so don't like brush them into each other. I would always tell my students like they can be hands cupped but not fingers laced. Like they can be next to each other but not all mingled into each other, and it's okay to do. Yep. Cool. Any other questions for the color? So yeah, with PM Shines, like we were saying, people love using that one as your ends refresher because there isn't going to be any kind of lifting action that happens. And it's just so gentle and safe to use on anyone, even if especially if they've got really damaged hair. This is one of the best things you can put on them. Even that clear shine.
Does it go into the dryer in terms of
It doesn't, yeah. So
more
Make it more permanent or more.
it doesn't. So something that used to be in the directions is you could put the reds under the dryer, but we found that it kind of makes them runny, and the idea would be for more vibrancy. But we found that like it doesn't make it enough more vibrant enough for that runniness, you know? So it's not meant to be used under the dryer, just at room temperature. If they got really, really coarse hair, I'll tell you might want to pop them under there, but I didn't officially tell you that, even though I'm being recorded. Or the clear, yeah.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Fillers.
Yeah.
Use it as a filler?
You can. I tend to go more towards the color for a filler because it'll be a little more pigment to it, but you can use the PM Shines as a filler if you need to.
So if you did, can you just wipe it off and put the color over it?
You can, yep.
Or do you have to rinse it out? So that's
Yep, you can just kind of wipe it off.
towel it off.
Yeah.
So if you were gonna use the color for filler,
Yeah.
use it as a demi with
Yeah.
volume.
Let's go. Let's touch back on that for a second for you guys.
Actually ordered the shines.
Yeah, so I mean, you can do either. That's the tricky thing is like we kind of offer an option within every brand, so it's just your preference.
And the color really makes more sense.
Yeah, you'll get a little more longevity out of it. So when you're repigmenting, let's say somebody comes in, they're level, 12 blonde and they want to go back to their natural color. And their natural color is say, they really like that 5N swatch and that's what's matching their roots. What happens if you put that 5N on them, on their really overly porous, overly lightened blonde hair? It's going to suck it up. It's going to suck it up and then spit it out the first time they wash it. And then what? Yeah, it'll take and it'll be kind of like a mucky, muddy color. Have you guys ever seen that? And then the first time they wash it, it's going to be kind of hollow. How come?
Because the hair is so porous that it just lets it all go.
Yeah, and what were you going to say? Right, it's not filled all the way. It's kind of just like a hollow little shell that you're painting the outside of. So think of it as like if you've got potholes in the road, you got to fill them in. You can't just pave right over them or else it's just going to kind of collapse and not be whole. So when you're repigmenting, you're putting that warmth back into the hair that makes up the background of a brown or a red or whatever color you're going for. So if they're up here at level 10 and they want to be down here at 5, basically you're skipping all of this right here, all of that red orange. So even if your guest doesn't want to be red, if they want to be brown, that red is in the background of that brown, which is making it look like a rich, full color, not that hollow, empty kind of mud color. So that's why you have to repigment or kind of fill that empty space. So all of your formulas for that are right here. You really have them all figured out for you already. So for the color, let's say, go down to where it says your target level. So we said our target level is 5. So we need to do equal parts of 6RO and 8R. So that makes a 7, right? Mixing our 6 and our 8 together. So what you want to do is fill with something 2 levels away from what you actually want to be, and then you can put your target color right on top of it. If we filled them all the way to a 5 and put a 5 right on top of that, they're going to be really, really dark. Okay? So we fill in that empty space all the way up to a 7, and then we'll put what we actually want to be right on top of that. And then all of those formulas are right in this little block for you. So then back to formulating with your PM Shines. It's honestly really easy. You can intermix any of those colors together, and it's just equal parts with your processing liquid. And then depending on, if you need to dilute, or let's say they're a level 10, you'll notice most of them only come in level 9. So if you needed to dilute it up to a level 10, you can do that with the Clear Shine. So those are really great to use as toners because you can have something at a lower level but still get that great kind of sheer tone to it. You can use it to go darker. It's great for that guest that wants to change their hair color all the time because it's not going to get stuck in the hair, and you'll have an easy time getting it out of the hair if they change their mind. So it's perfect for the commitment phobes out there, or maybe they want to be red this time and then brown the next time. Cool? Any questions for that one? Your most popular ones will probably be like the 9V and the 9BV. Those are really popular for toning. You might use that for your blondes the most. Cool? No questions?
No, I'm getting a lot out of it.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
I learned on Redken, and a lot is similar. But
Yeah,
it's
to the
different
shades.
At the same time.
Yep.
Because I did corrective color at the exchange.
Yep.
So I like the way that this color wheel is.
Yeah.
This would have been nice when I was at the exchange.
Yeah. Cool, good. All right, no more questions from you guys? All right, so next is Pop XG. This is the fun one. Are you guys waiting for this one? So I personally really enjoy this one, if you guys can't tell. It's a great option for your fashion tones. So these are going to give you your vibrant pops of color on pre-lightened hair. So these are those direct dyes that we talked about. So remember, oxidative dye starts really small, grows to be really big. A direct dye starts out really large, and you don't mix it with anything, and then it stays that size. Yeah.
Around like how long do these last?
So technically, by the book, up to 6 weeks. But the tricky thing about that is everyone's head of hair is so different. You know, so if somebody has really porous hair, it could last a lot longer than that. If somebody's got really healthy hair that's like a closed cuticle, it could kind of fall right off. And it really depends on what they're using at home. So when I have a guest come in, I'll tell them 4 to 6 weeks if they have to be using the right thing at home. You know, they have to be caring for it the right way. But if you care for this the wrong way, it could be out in a week. If you care for it the right way, it could last you 3 months. Yeah. It's okay.
Retail products and regular products, where's the difference?
Like versus what you could buy in the store? So that's a good question. So I'm going to leave you with this little book about it. This is all about all of our different brands and everything that we have. And I'll leave these extras for you guys to read. So did you guys hear her question? Your professional salon products versus what they can just buy, you know, at Rite Aid or something like that. So there's two sides of it. There's diversion. Has anyone heard of diversion? We can talk about that in a second. So not that kind. A little different. So there's diversion, and that's when professional products are sold kind of black market. They're either stolen or they're old or they're fake. And it can be pretty gross. It can have a lot of bacteria in it. And it doesn't just happen with hair products. It happens with all kinds of things like clothing. Baby formula is a huge one that it happens to, which is kind of scary. I don't really know a lot about feeding babies, but that sounds really scary. But it's basically black market, so things are just sold illegally, but it's not technically illegal. It's kind of a gray area. And then there are, you know, your products that are meant to be sold, you know, from Walmart or Target or things like that. So, you know, every professional brand is going to be a little bit different, but Paul Mitchell's answer and what I can say about our company, it's just the quality of the product, the quality of the ingredients, the research that goes into it. We have a whole lab. It's called the PIC Center, the Product Innovation Center, a whole team of chemists, you know, working on and developing these professional grade products with professional grade ingredients. And then they're rigorously tested before they're released. So a lot more work goes into it, and it's a lot higher quality ingredients. And it's meant to go into the hairdresser's hands because we know that a hairdresser is going to recommend the right thing, right? We could have the same bottle of shampoo work differently on everyone in here. It's not really one size fits all. So it's up to the hairdresser to make that professional recommendation versus the stylist to just kind of pick out, or not the stylist, the guest to pick out like, oh, this one smells good, I'll buy this one, right? When that might not be the best thing for their situation or to care for their type of hair. So it's really all about the professional hairdresser and making sure that they're recommending the right thing, right? So, and that's what Paul Mitchell is all about, is just staying with the hairdresser and not selling directly to that consumer.
Is there like a different smell between like the one that's sold on retail shelves and the one that's
I mean, yes and no. Like, it could be, there's thousands of different products out there, you know, so obviously that'll be different. I'll tell you that if something's got like a really overpowering, overwhelming smell, it can be really high amounts of fragrance, and that's a high amount of like alcohol in the product. That can be drying for the hair. Yeah.
Something to touch on the smell with products. So I know a lot of products get sold at TJ Maxx, CVS, stuff like that. So at the salon I used to work at, we sold ISO, which I really like their color shampoo and conditioner. One of our clients bought it at CVS. When she brought the bottle in, because her color started to come out, we smelled the contents, and it was Aussie.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wait,
You know,
what was it?
Like
Aussie.
they put Aussie shampoo
ISO. Yeah, it's a professional product that, you know, technically you should only be getting at.
But they just put like Austin bottles.
Yeah.
And you can smell Austin.
And you can smell it.
Yeah.
There was no doubting what it was.
I know exactly.
But that's the thing. They could dump half the bottle out pour the whole bottle out and put something
Yeah.
else in it. You don't know what's in it, and that's what I try to tell my clients, what I try to tell you. It's just better to just get it at the beauty supply store, buy it in a salon. That way you don't have to worry about it because you don't know what's at TJ Maxx. You don't know. You don't know what's happened anywhere and what product
Right.
is actually in there. And it says right on the bottle, not guaranteed. Professional product if it's sold in those places. So.
Or I'll tell you guys a story of a colleague of mine. When she was in the salon, she had some coworkers doing a full foil on someone. This girl had, hair down to her butt, virgin hair, never colored, and they put one foil in, and it instantly started smoking and just like melted right off of her head. Right? So they're like, what could this possibly be? She doesn't have well water, she doesn't have this, she doesn't have that, medication, virgin hair, never colored, and you can tell if somebody's like, yeah, I've never colored my hair, but they actually did. Like she really had never colored her hair. So they went through everything, and then she eventually was like, oh, well, I have been using this shampoo at home. It was called like long-term relationship or something like that. It basically meant to grow your hair long. And they brought it in, looked at the back of the bottle. There's sodium hydroxide in it. What else is sodium hydroxide in? Soap relaxer, perhaps, right? So really, really small diluted amounts, but using it every single day, that interacted with the lightener in a really violent way, right? So if that was in the professional hair industry, with a company that's making color and relaxer, they would know, don't put that into your shampoo, right? So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly just one thing to tell you, don't use that for. It's more like, okay, we develop all of this color in these professional products, so a professional company is going to know what's best to be using to protect that and protect your hair. Cool. And then as far as diversion, I mean, that's like a whole class that we could have together. So that's when things are sold on the black market. And it happens with every brand, because Paul Mitchell's at a lower price point too. They're kind of a target for diversion. But we're one of the only companies that is actually fighting it. A lot of companies out there are like, well, sales is sales, cool, like sell to people. And then even a lot of companies will take the money that you as a hairdresser are spending on them to buy their professional color and professional products, and then they'll also go and sell it in the grocery store to take all your money that you're spending on them and spend it on marketing to say, hey, you don't need a hairdresser, color your hair at home, right? That's kind of messed up in my opinion. I want to work with a company that's really supporting the professional hairdresser, right? So Paul Mitchell's actually working hard to fight diversion and stop it. So kind of just summarizing how it'll work, we have different distributors throughout the country. So I work for JPMS, Paul Mitchell, and then Paul Mitchell Northern New England is your distributor in this area. So they're based out of Hooksett, and then it's kind of different all throughout the country. Every state has like its own distributor. So essentially, Paul Mitchell Northern New England is your distributor for this area, so they sell you your Paul Mitchell. Does that make sense how that works? So essentially, if you get, Paul Mitchell from Rite Aid or from Target or from Walmart or whatever that might be, it's diverted. So it's either old, it's stolen, or it's fake. It could be refilled with something else. And if you're a guest that's not looking at those bottles all the time, you might not notice. But you guys, if you're looking at, a bottle of Shampoo One all day, every day, you might notice that on the one in the store, the font's a little different or the label's just slightly off. That a guest might not see those things, but you as the hairdresser know that that's not a real bottle of shampoo. It could be filled with something else. Or it could be so old and filled with bacteria. If you do a little YouTube search on diverted products, there's all kinds of news studies that they've done where they've tested it and there's dangerous amounts of bacteria in some of them. You could get a staph infection from a bottle of shampoo. And a lot of times it's a lot more expensive in that store than from a hairdresser, but they think that they're getting a deal.
Say that. Hannaford has it.
Yeah.
And I looked at that the other day.
Yeah.
Say that.
I looked at it at TJ Maxx because I worked there.
Mm.
People ask me all the time when I'm getting good, what should I get? I'm like,
Just don't.
go to
Yeah.
the salon and buy it. Yeah, that's what you
A lot of times it's more expensive, but they don't know. They would assume it's less, because they don't know that pricing. But I remember I saw, a bottle of sculpting foam at Walmart. It was like $15. You could get that for like $8 or $9 from a salon. Pretty crazy. So just keep that in mind, and it's important for you guys to kind of deliver that message to consumers because they might not know the difference. So that's the biggest thing for diversion. A lot of what me and the other corporate team will do is kind of take pictures of the codes on the bottom. We used to buy it up, and then that caused there to be more production of it. So we'll take pictures of the code, and then we can pinpoint where that bottle came from. And usually it's from like nowhere even near that area that you're in. And then the distributor is fined $100 to $150 per bottle if they can figure out like where that came from. So all of the distributors are very serious about making sure it's not going into a salon that'll kind of sell it out the back door to someone else. So that's a whole class that we could have. But there's a lot of information on it on paulmitchell.com, and just go on YouTube and search diverted hair products. There's lots of fun videos you can watch there. Cool. And then, like I said, we'll touch on products after Pop XG, but let's talk about your fashion tones. Yeah? So who has a question right off the bat about these? Like a burning question they're waiting to ask before we dive into it? Seemed like you did. Yeah.
How do you pronounce this one?
Bordeaux. Anyone else? Cool, so let's get right into it then. So Pop XG is a fairly new product for us, came out last September. And it's definitely a long-awaited product, right? Fashion tones have really just exploded over the last couple of years, and they're not going away anytime soon. So this is something that is becoming a lot more mainstream as well, which means you can make a lot of money in the salon doing it. It used to be forever ago, like, you know, kids, I know me, like when I was 15, I'd be trying to do this in the bathroom, staining my parents' tub, and they would be mad about it, right? That used to be the clientele for these type of colors. Now it's much more popular for, you know, I'm lucky I have a job where I can have green hair and have a legitimate job, but it's becoming a lot more popular for that to be accepted, which is pretty cool. You see a lot of adults are, a couple weeks ago I ran into this lady stopped me in the grocery store. I don't, like, people just like to stop me because I have fun hair, I think, but she had bright purple hair, and she told me she was 87 years old, and she had a million questions for me. She's like, how do you get it to last? How do you do that? And she was like, my hairdresser said I couldn't be any more purple than this, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you go more purple, Betty. But it's becoming so much more mainstream, which is really cool. And people are going to their hairdressers for this service, which is really great for you guys, because this is something you could make several $100s off of for just a couple hour service. So it's a great little industry to get into, or a great little part of the industry to get into. A lot of salons too won't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. They'll just say, no, we don't do fashion tones, because it really is, it's a long process, and you have to do it the right way. And a lot of guests will have, you know, expectations. They'll say, okay, I have half an hour, and I've been coloring my hair black for 5 years, and I want to be silver today. Right? So you can't be the hairdresser that's saying, okay, yeah, like we'll try, and then, you know, their hair gets to maybe orange and then falls to the ground. Like, you have to be the one that's consulting and making a game plan for these type of things with them. Yeah, exactly. So Pop XG is our extremely saturated, durable, direct dye. We have another product called Inkworks that you might see out there, and that's been around for like 10 or 15 years. And that came out when people actually wanted these colors only to last 2 to 4 weeks. Now people want it to last forever until the day that they want it out, then they want it out that day, right? So Pop XG was created for the demand where they want the fashion tones to be a lot longer lasting. So this is your option for that. Whereas Inkworks is just gonna kind of fade out of the hair. We are, and that was my first question when this came along. If, let's say, over a couple years no one's buying it, that's when we might look at kind of getting rid of it, but as for now, we still want to have those two options. Yep. Inkworks. So it's almost like it's in a vegetable conditioner base, so it's almost like just really pigmented conditioner, pops of color, different from this one. And then it's just going to be not as long lasting, maybe 2 to 4 weeks if you're lucky. So this one is meant for that longevity. So because it's direct dyes, though, it can be very tricky. It has to be put on the right type of hair. You have to make sure the hair isn't, you know, totally trash that you're putting on, or else it can wash out really quickly. And they absolutely have to be using the right products at home. I won't even do one of these services in the salon without somebody, like, it's just part of the deal that you're going to buy those products. Because you could put hours and hours of work into giving someone blue hair, and if they go home and they're going to wash it with, you know, Suave, that's a waste of all that time that you put into it and the money that they spent on it. So you have to make sure that they're using the right things at home to care for this. Cool? What? Oh, like, I didn't look at you. You use Suave on it? Is it like a blue murder in your bathroom? Yeah. So you absolutely have to. Like, I would even just build in my salon, I was able to kind of just control prices of things, but I would even just build it into the price, like that you are taking shampoo and conditioner home with you. It's not an option. Yeah, like if I'm going to spend 3 hours turning your hair teal, you're going to use the right thing at home, but every salon's different. So anyways, we'll get into our different colors. So you've got your bright fashion tones along the top. That third row, that's more of your pastels, the softer options. And then that bottom row, you've got your steel. The midnight is actually more of an additive that you can put into any of the other colors to make them darker or like a deeper version of itself. So if you wanted to make that blue more of like a navy blue or the green more of like an emerald, that's what the midnight is for. So not really meant to be used alone. It's meant to be an additive. And then the diluter can be used to soften any of these colors. It makes it kind of more of a watercolor effect versus a pastel. So the pink itself is super intense. It's very, very saturated. So if you're looking, if that's too much and you want to kind of tone it down a little bit, make it a little softer, that's what the diluter can be used for. Cool? Yeah.
Now, Audrey and I were talking. So if you were gonna do a pastel tone for Bordeaux, wouldn't you just use the pink flamingo?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So right down here, it'll give you directions on if you wanted to make your own custom pastel. You can mix supercharged moisturizer into it. Any white conditioner is fine to use, but the supercharged is kind of the same texture as this, so that's why we recommend it. But when you do that, you're bringing that pH down a little bit. The pH of this one is a 7, so it's able to raise that cuticle just a little bit and get those dyes in there. When you're mixing conditioner into it, it'll kind of dilute that, so it won't last quite as long. Whereas these pre-blended pastels, those will get the same longevity as the rest of it. So if you wanted it to kind of wash away a little easier, then that's when you might want to do the conditioner with it.
Out of the pink flamingo or the pink,
Yeah.
do it with the Bordeaux.
Yep.
I gotcha.
Perfect. And then another thing, especially with like the Bordeaux or the midnight, some of these look a little bit darker than they might actually be coming out of the tube, kind of like with that 9V. So especially the Bordeaux, that one will almost look like it's going to be like dark violet coming out of the tube. So don't let that scare you. Or the opalescent. Have you guys gotten to work with any of these yet?
Yes. What do you have in your hair?
So I have on my hair, I've got like this much regrowth right here, but on the rest of it I have green, or I have actually tropical blue and yellow and teal. But then we have a new color conditioner system that I've been experimenting with that's kind of still in development, kind of launching this month, where I have like the maximum amount of blue in it. So underneath my hair is kind of more like a highlighter green color, and then I've just been using that maximum blue conditioner to get teal.
What did we use on it, Amanda?
We used just the blue. We did a blue.
Because we took test strands. She
Yeah.
started with
She's the guinea pig.
We started with blue, green, purplish.
Yeah.
Mint, all mint
Mixture.
color. It was mint, but it was the color of the Sylvester's cup when we started the process.
Okay.
And we were like, oh God, we don't really know what's on there, so we just
Yeah.
tried to even it. She had lighter roots, so
Yeah.
we did the color on her roots, and well, Amanda did, and faded it out, but just took.
I love
she
it.
wanted fun colors, but we weren't really sure what was going to happen to it.
Yeah.
So we had never used it before, so we took 3 test strands of the blue, teal, and the mint. I didn't feel like would have ever made any difference, so it wouldn't have.
Yeah, it has to be really light for those pastels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was really super, super corrective color
Hmm.
because she had so many colors in there. But I was just curious looking at her hair.
Yeah.
And your hair.
Yeah.
What that difference was.
Like my hair, the canvas underneath is like Big Bird yellow blonde. Like that's just what my hair lifts to naturally, or not naturally, with lightener. And then I have like a combination of tropical blue, yellow, and teal. Mostly yellow on the ends, kind of anticipating that the blue of my roots would like stain that as I wash it. But then, like I said, I've been using a pigmented blue conditioner that we were just launching this month at home. So that made it even more green teal colored.
Are the conditioners that are like going to be coming out this month, is it just going to be blue, or are you going to do like a series of different
There's all kinds of them, and they're
So,
really
like, I'm assuming,
fun. It's my favorite thing.
purples and like for all of the different pop extreme colors?
Well, no, they're meant for really any hair color. So there's like brown options, blonde, red. As far as fashion tones, we really only have like the blue and red and orange. But then coming out in a few months, we might have some more brighter ones coming along too.
So
What does she have? What do you have in your hair?
What do you have in your hair?
I have the.
It's called Color Craft,
Color
that conditioner.
Craft, the conditioner with the concentrate. So I have the yellow, which is honeycomb, and then I have the red, which is paprika.
They're super fun, and it's really.
And that, you got that color just from the conditioner.
Yep, because underneath here I had like an ombre balayage, and it was a level 9, 8, 9. Wow.
They are so fun, yeah.
Really,
And it's cool because you custom make your own conditioner, so you add your own pigments into it. It's pretty cool. It depends on, what you're looking for. It's definitely not meant to replace a hair color service. It's just meant to give you a little, meant to like refresh in between services. So great for redheads that fade in between getting their hair done, or if somebody's got some gray and you want to kind of blend that in a little bit. But then it just washes out really easily. And because it's customizable, you can just do one pump of those pigments and it's just going to wash out the next time. You can do up to 20 pumps and it'll be at least like a week or two before it completely comes out. So yeah, they're really fun. I can leave a little brochure on that too if you guys want to read about it. Yeah.
And what about the XG? So your hair or Shay's hair, what are
Pop
we
XG.
talking down the road? 6 months down the road, it's still in her hair.
So if you want to get it out,
If you want to change.
Okay. So we have actually just launched at the beginning of May something called Pop XG Reducer that I absolutely love. It's a direct dye remover. So it's really meant for Pop XG and Inkworks. I've been testing it out on people that have other things, other brands in their hair. And it does work really well, but it's hard to be completely reliable if they come in with either like box dye or other brands. But it's a reducer for those direct dyes. So not necessarily guaranteed to bring it to exactly where it was before, but it's able to break down those larger dye molecules and flush them out of the hair. Whereas sometimes putting lightener on it can just drive it in further. So, yeah.
Does the e-color have any impact over that? Like, are they meant to intermix one another? Like, what if you just wanted to go back to brown? Is that...
So, like, for my situation, if I wanted to go back to brown, I would use that reducer to just kind of remove because it might be kind of like a greenish brown, so almost like get it a little lighter and then deposit on top of it. Same with like a red or any other color. So that reducer, it's their little persulfate packets and they're ammonia free, so they leave the hair in really good condition after. And you can either mix it with water, 10 volume or 20 volume, depending on what you're looking for. Water's good if it's like almost completely washed out and you just have a little bit of a stain left. And then the 10 or 20 is for more like if me or my friend here wanted to change out, if we were like, get it all out of my hair. I've seen it perform miraculous things. I've seen it only lift a little bit.
Because she changes it out all the time.
Yeah.
You'll go home beautiful like that, you come back the next day.
So it's perfect. It's perfect. I'm the same way. So yeah, I'm the same. I had brown hair for like a minute last month, and everyone I encountered, because I work in New York like 1 week a month, so I don't see those people that I work with too often, and I would go and see them, and they'd be like, oh. I'm like, what? They're like, you have normal hair. I'm like, you have blonde hair. Why are you disappointed in me? But yeah. So yeah, everyone I see now is like, oh, you went back to your natural. I'm so glad. But yeah. So it's great for people that want to change it up. But just keep in mind there's no like one miracle product that's going to completely remove direct dyes. It really depends on the head of hair, not necessarily the dyes themselves. Yeah.
With the clients that we have from like 2 or 3 years ago that are still coming back to get color services done from us, we have like Renkin and Pico. How are we supposed to change that?
Yeah, it's like if they have a formula that's been working for them. So that's when you'll use your color map and, determine what they were using before and what the base of that was. And then you'll be able to find that matching formula right in here. So I would say like keep the information from before, right? That way you're able to kind of translate that formula over. And this, because it lists out for you exactly what has brown and what doesn't, it's really easy to translate. Because a lot of brands, it'll just figure out the base of it. Is it red or is it red-orange? Or is it yellow-orange? And then from there you can figure out, okay, well, what are my options in there? Does it have brown? Does it have natural? So it'll be pretty easy to figure out. Just always go back to your color map for that, and you can find a matching formula. You'll be just fine, don't worry.
Well, you already did that on those 2 ladies the other day that you guys did. So we just found out what they were in Cosmetology level.
It came pretty close.
It came very close.
Because in Chicho, like, there's not
No.
Mm.
So there's less guesswork with this.
Mhm.
That's why we all kind of decided this would be better for you there's not that, oh my God, we want a level 5, we have to go with the 7 because it takes 2 shades darker.
Right.
It's pretty true to what you see is what you get.
For those of you who just said that we didn't like two-tone, two-tone is hard for students. It's a great color. I didn't have trouble with it. It took me a year to learn it per se, but it is very difficult to formulate it for students, and that's why we switched to Palmetto Gel. We've had two-tone since this program opened.
So yeah, this is great because it can be very simple, but then you can, get a little more complicated and get like your bright fashion tones or reds with it. But it can also be just great for gray coverage, so kind of good for almost everything. Well, so back to our Pop XG, you've got your 18 different shades that we talked about. They're in a really rich, thick conditioning base, so it's almost like a little mini treatment for the hair, which usually if somebody has pre-lightened hair, they could use a little bit of a treatment. And because it's in that thicker base, it's great to place on the hair, and it's not going to run into other things. Like let's say you've got multicolors going on someone's head. You're able to just place them on there and not worry about them running into each other. It just kind of sticks right where you put it. And then long-lasting durability, so up to 6 weeks is what we're recommending, or not recommending, but proposing this is going to last. That's always going to depend on what they're using at home, what they already come in with, things that help with that. If they come in and they've got really damaged hair, doing a treatment right before you do this will definitely help it stick in the hair much better. You've got to apply to dry hair most of the time for these ones. That's going to give you more longevity. And then just making sure they're using the right thing at home. Like I said, if they're using something that they got from the dollar store that's just really high-end detergents, it can strip this right out of their hair. So make sure that they're using something to take care of that. And then your guidelines are right on this side right here. So before you pop, before you're going to color their hair, if there's any products buildup, you have to wash that out of their hair, right? So if somebody comes in and like we were talking about before, they've got a week of dry shampoo, they've got mineral buildup, they've got all kinds of things in their hair. Like let's say you didn't have to pre-lighten them. Like I came in and I was like, just put green on my hair, guys, just refresh it. And if I've got a ton of products, a ton of dry shampoo, think of it as like this glossy piece of paper. If you took a marker and wrote on that, what happens? It just kind of like falls right off. But if you take more of like a porous piece of computer paper, like your note paper that you guys have, it's going to absorb a lot better, right? So think of that, dirty hair or that hair that's not pre-treated as that glossy piece of paper. Direct dyes can just kind of roll right off of them because it doesn't have ammonia, it doesn't have developer, and that's what lifts open the cuticle so color can get in there. So you have to kind of have a little bit of porosity so this is able to get into the hair. So pre-treat them with your shampoo too. You do have to pre-lighten for these, so this doesn't lift at all. Keep that in mind. A lot of guests will think you can just put these on brown hair and it'll turn their hair that color. These don't lift at all. These are for pre-lightened hair. Okay, so this chart right here will tell you what level they really need to be at. So for most of them, it is level 9 to 10, right? And you always have to think about their dominant pigment. It's going to interact with that. So if you lighten someone to a level 9, what's the dominant pigment of that? Yellow, right? And then you put that blue on it. Yeah.
Well, it's going to look more green.
Yeah, it'll be more of like a tealish type of blue, right? So blue especially, I use that as an example because that's the only primary color we don't have in our hair naturally, right? We already have red and yellow in there and every shade of orange underneath. But blue is really the only primary color we don't have in there. So if you're putting that on, existing hair color, it's going to intermix with that. So you have to kind of get rid of everything else, lighten everything else, get them to a level 9 or 10. And then if you're looking for that true primary blue, you really have to tone that yellow out of their hair first.
So could you put like a little bit of purple in there?
Yeah.
Tone out the yellow and then also keep the blue?
Yep, you can do that. You can mix a little bit of purple into there. Or an option that you have, let's say you lifted them to a level 9, they've still got a lot of yellow. You can use that 9P right in here to tone that out and then put your color on top of it, and it's going to be the longest lasting option for you. Cool? So that 9P is chosen because that's the one right in the violet family right here.
Could you use the, I know it says over here that it can use to tone out the blonde.
Yeah. So the opalescent, that was one that I was going to say, the first time you use this one, don't freak out because it comes out of the tube like dark blue violet, and everyone that doesn't know that freaks out and thinks that they have even I did the first time I used this. It comes out of the tube dark blue violet, and it'll scare all of your blonde guests when you put it on them. But it leaves the hair just like glowing Elsa white hair. It's so pretty. So yeah, it's meant to be like a toner and get rid of any brassiness or yellowness. So that's a great option. A lot of people will just keep this right at their back bar and use it as a toner. So that's going to go on damp hair for 5 to 15 minutes. The rest of them are meant for dry hair for 30 minutes, and that's all listed right in here. Cool. So if you're going to tone before you do like blue, for example, or purple, and you want to tone their hair first, get rid of some of that pigment, I'll recommend using something that's got a little bit of ammonia in it, like the color, because this can be so smoothing and hydrating that it kind of closes the cuticle down. So putting on another layer, it's hard to kind of get in there. So that's why I'll recommend toning with something like this before you do one of these colors. It'll still work the other way, but you'll get a lot more longevity doing it that way. So yep, that opalescent, this one right here, that can be used as a toner. The rest of them, dry hair for 30 minutes. Your blue, purple, pink, steel, most of your cooler tones, that's really meant for level 9 to 10. So if their hair gets to a level 8, which what does a level 8 look like when you've lightened it? What's the dominant pigment there? Yellow-orange, right? So think of like a number 2 pencil, right? And then level 9, that's more like the outside of a banana. Level 10, inside of a banana. So it's really all different kinds of yellow, but keep in mind, like that pencil right there. So that's going to be your level 8 hair that you've got right there. So if somebody's lifted to that and they really want to be purple, right? And we're just like praying and hoping that it works out, and we put the purple on anyways. What happens when we're mixing purple with yellow-orange? Yeah, it's going to kind of just work to neutralize it. So you're mixing the purple with the yellow and the orange. The purple is really just working to neutralize the yellow. What's left is a little bit of like a orangey red tone plus whatever purple's left over. So it's kind of like a muddy brown, not very bright, vibrant color. You've really got to lift it to that level 9 or 10, maybe tone it if you want the brightest option, and then put your color on top of it. You guys see like how long of a process this can be? It's not just like a quick, fun little thing to add onto it unless they've already got pre-lightened hair. So that's why salons will charge quite a bit of money for this and take quite a bit of time. But just make sure you're doing it the right way and not just thinking you can throw this on someone whose hair isn't light enough for it. So level 9 to 10 is the recommended one. For the orange, the red, and the Bordeaux, level 7 to 8. So if they're at that kind of orangey, golden stage, those are the perfect background for it. Because if you put that red on someone with level 10 hair, first time they wash it, what do you think that'll look like? Yeah, it's going to be kind of more of a pink than a true rich red. And then same with the Bordeaux, it'll be more of like a fuchsia, which is okay if that's what they want. But if they really like this swatch and want it to look just like that, then that's going to look best on hair that's pre-lightened to level 7 and 8. Which is nice because sometimes that if they've been coloring their hair for a while, that might be all that you get them to lift to today until next time. And then your opalescent, like we said, level 9 to 10, 5 to 15 minutes on damp hair. And then your custom pastel tones, so that's if you're mixing it with conditioner to kind of make your own color. That'll be level 10 for 5 to 15 minutes. And then, so for your pastels, you'll intermix it with supercharged moisturizer. You really can use any white Palm Gel conditioner. That one's just a really thick texture, so it's easy to mix with. And then if you want to dilute it or kind of soften that shade a little bit, you can use that diluter. It'll be 2 to 3 parts diluter with 1 part of your selected shade. And then if you wanted to use the midnight to make something a little bit deeper or darker, it'll be 1 part midnight to 1 to 3 parts of the selected shade. And the midnight is really intense. Like you can definitely go overboard with that. You don't need much at all. So 1 to 3 is that one. And then as far as what you're using at home, shampoo 1 or Awapui shampoo, the original one, is best shampoos that you can use to preserve this. Because we have, shampoos out there, and lots of brands do that are, color protecting or color repairing. But those are really engineered and meant for oxidative dyes or permanent dyes like the color. They're meant to protect that kind of dye. Whereas direct dyes work a little bit differently. They're larger, it's harder to kind of keep in the hair, so you need something as gentle as possible to not flush it out of the hair. So shampoo 1 is a great option. The detangler that we talked about earlier is one of the best conditioners you can use for this. Just something super gentle and mild, whereas sometimes if you have a really moisturizing shampoo, that can be like the worst thing for it, even if it's a great product, because it'll open up that cuticle, try and push in all of that good moisture and protein and force out some of the color. So it can almost fade your color for you, even though it's a great shampoo. So that's your guest recommendations down here, and then there's some extra fun formulas on the back for you guys. Cool. Any questions for those? Fashion tone questions? Anything like that? Oh, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. Let's talk about our products. So we don't have a product. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Which lighteners are you guys carrying? Do you know the name of it? Synchro Lift. There's dual purpose lightener, Synchro Lift, and Lighten Up. Okay. Is it a powder lightener?
Yes.
Okay, so it's either Synchro Lift or dual purpose lightener.
I think it was Synchro Lift because I looked at it.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so the lightener that you guys will be using. So Synchro Lift. So this is an awesome lightener, especially for, practicing and kind of getting used to how lighteners work. So who can give me, a really simple way to explain what's the difference between lightener and color? They don't stop, they just keep going, right? Yeah. So like what's actually happening to the hair when you use lightener versus color? Yeah. Perfect. So what we had talked about before with an oxidative color, that ABCD, right? All of that works together to open up the cuticle, put the color into the hair, but then it also oxidizes that natural melanin. So you're able to get lift with permanent color that way. With lightener, it's able to do all of that, but it's almost like Pac-Man, like it just eats through the color, but it can also eat through the protein and the moisture and all of the good things that you want too. It has no regard for what it's going through. So that's why you have to be really careful with lighteners. You can have really crazy situations if you use it the wrong way, because it doesn't stop working as long as it doesn't dry out. Cool? Does anyone had any crazy experiences with lightener? Right? We all know how powerful it can be in the wrong hands, or if you're not sure what you're doing with it, or if it's on the wrong head of hair, or if, they say they've never colored their hair, but they've actually got a little something in there.
One time last year, a girl in our class was putting lightener on her mannequin. She piled it on top of each other, and then it started smoking.
Ah.
So I actually bleached my hair twice the same day, and every time I did it, I put it in a bun, and then I had little pieces burned off to there.
Yeah. So everyone's got a little anecdote.
The first time I ever actually lightened my hair when I first wanted to, I think I did like teal or something. This was a couple of years ago after the summer ended. And she put it into little buns up like this. And like, not a lot of it like broke off, but I had pieces on the side that were like all like paper.
Yeah.
Like the middle, it didn't end up actually processing evenly.
Yeah.
Because it was all like smushed together. So I had like pieces that were like light here and then like orange here and then bright blonde here. And
Do you guys know why that might happen?
because hot spots, because it's all together.
Yeah, so if you've got that all clumped together, like lightener becomes more reactive with heat, and your head's always producing heat. So if you put a big pile of it right in the back, everything that's closer to your head's going to lift like crazy, and then the rest of it's going to stay cold and not lift too much. So.
And don't sit by a window. I learned that the hard way because I lightened it at home at Mama's Kitchen Salon.
Yeah.
My nana was doing it actually, and I made the mistake of sitting by the window in the summer.
Yeah. And that side of your head lifted even more.
And my nana didn't believe me. She said
It's kind of like driving, how you'll get like a sunburn on one side of your face and arm. Yeah.
She said
That's
I was
crazy.
a drama queen as my head was burning.
The school I was at this weekend is in like an old car dealership. It was actually pretty cool, but it's like 2 floors, but ceiling to floors all window. And if you get anywhere near the window, it was like 90 degrees. So all of the students were like putting their dolls over there after they put lightener on it. I'm like, what's going? Oh, it's 100 degrees over there. Okay. But yeah, so heat is going to make lightener a lot more reactive. So that being said, I don't want to scare you guys away from it, but you kind of have to like have respect for what it can do, because it can get crazy really fast, but then it can also do awesome things and leave the hair in great condition. So I like to call it bleach if I'm trying to scare someone away from it, and call it lightener when I'm trying to talk them into it. So same thing though. Yeah.
So, if a person goes home and bleaches their hair,
They would never.
I've already done it once in a long time. I'm not doing it again. And so, if they come back to the salon and they want a different color, how do you, like, you probably experimented once or twice, but how do you like even if I
Yeah, it depends. You might need to fill it. It really depends on the situation. You might need to do a treatment beforehand to put protein and moisture back into it. It's kind of case by case and what level that hair's living at.
chemical reaction, does that happen?
It's hard to tell. It depends on what they used at home. So if they use something that that anyone that's not a hairdresser could buy, you could have a really bad reaction. So that's when you always want to do a strand test. Make sure that before you start diving in, putting it all over their head, you want to make sure nothing's going to melt off on you. Anyways, let's talk about Synchro Lift, because it is a very safe and gentle lightener while we're talking about all these scary things that lightener can do. This is actually very, very gentle on the hair. It has a base of potato starch, which is actually something that's used as an ingredient on burn victims. It makes it very soothing and gentle on your scalp if it's someone that gets really itchy. So if you're someone that gets really itchy, if you have lightener on your head, this is a much more mild, gentle lightener that you can use. And that base of potato starch prevents it from swelling like a traditional lightener does. So a lot of times lightener will puff up quite a bit. You guys have experienced that happening. So this will the tiniest bit, but not very much. So you're able to get very close with your foils with this one. You don't have to back off quite as much. And it doesn't dry out as fast as a traditional lightener. So a lot of people like using this in a hand painting situation as well. You can get a full 7 levels of lift with this one. It'll be 1 scoop to 2 ounces of your developer. And then mix it with a little whisk. It's a really nice creamy texture to it. But yeah, you can get up to 7 levels with this one, 5 to 40 volume. You never want to use more than 20 on someone's head, on someone's scalp with this one. Yeah, any other questions about it? It's pretty easy to use. Depends on which developer you mix it with. Yeah, it'll be more alkaline though.
It's on off scalp?
Yep, on or off the scalp. You can use dual purpose lightener on or off the scalp though, yeah.
So you have 2 different ones?
Yeah, we have 2 powder lighteners. So this is a good one to, it's kind of really preference. So dual purpose lightener is kind of like your workhorse lightener, like busts through old color, dark color, a little more aggressive. Whereas this is going to be like your quick, gentle lifting one. So I think that would be a good fit. And then we have a new one that's just launching this month too for hand painting that's a clay base to it. So that's more meant for your off scalp use. Well, any questions about lighteners? So you can use this one for your foils, your highlighting, previous color, anything like that. And then before you guys go to lunch, let's touch on, your different products that you have. So I've been talking a lot. I'll give it over to Crystal. If you want to just kind of break down our different categories that we have.
Okay, so we have our color repair. So we have like the Paul Mitchell, which is the black and white that Taylor was talking about. So that one includes any of the bottles that have the Paul Mitchell brand going vertical on it. So I saw that you guys have the moisture line, the color care line, and I don't really remember what else I saw when I walked by, but any of the white bottles that have
I have more of these in the car too. I'll bring them for you guys.
Mostly what you guys have is the Paul Mitchell brand. So if we want to, okay, so the color repair is the orange bottle. This one is made with quinoa, so this one's way more reparative. It smells really good. It's really good for anti-fade for colors, especially reds. In this one, you have the shampoo and the conditioner. And there's a triple rescue, which is a thermal protectant for color, which is different than the thermal protectant that we usually use when we use it our hot tools. So this triple rescue is designed to prevent color from fading when you use your hot tools on it.
Especially like redheads, if you go in on someone and go in right with a flat iron or curling iron with no heat protection, it can fade it, almost instantly. So it's great for preventing that from happening.
And then also in this line you have a reparative mask. So for somebody who's continuously getting that permanent color, this is really good to help repair it because you do damage hair a little bit when you're using color. So it's really nice that there is something to help repair that there. And then the blonde, you guys have this one, the Forever Blonde line?
At the same, just at the same.
Oh, perfect. Cool.
So this is the blonde line. There's Forever Blonde, which is for
Pass this
our
around if you guys want to.
artificial blonde, which is anyone who's not natural. So all those people that we have to use our lighteners on to create those lighter levels, that's the Forever Blonde. It has the Care Active ingredient in them, so it's reparative as well as moisturizing. But then we also have the Platinum Blonde. That's the one that, I don't know if you've used it or you have it here where you squeeze it out and it's like really, really violet. Do you have that one here? So that one, yeah, so that one is going to help tone out a little bit of those yellow tones that are still left in the hair. And it also has the Dramatic Repair Spray, so another like a rescue treatment that's going to give you back some moisture and some reparative agents in there.
And that dramatic repair spray, like that doesn't, they don't just have to be blonde to use that. Anyone that's had lightener in their hair can benefit from that one. So somebody like me, or if you've had someone that's had highlights and maybe they're not, blonde, maybe you put red over it or something like that. The Forever Blonde line is really meant for lightener damaged hair versus thermal damage or color damage.
And then the curls. You guys have the curls line? Yeah. Okay, well, the curls line.
Is it out there? Can I take a peek at what you have?
If you guys have curly hair, the curls line is designed for a curly haired girl.
Cool.
Not just that you eventually want curly hair. And I know sometimes have you guys, before you were in school and learned about curly hair, when you went to the store, you saw like, oh, that's for curls. So grab that and shampoo my hair.
So we have stuff on retail, and then our other stuff is our back bar for the girls to use on clients and stuff like that. I think they really are actually working and putting product in the client's hair, where before I think they were a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And they weren't really understanding it. I always want to make sure
Yeah.
put some product in the hair.
I have a bunch of those books. I'll bring them in. That way you can have them. Yeah.
They are really lightweight. And the styling products are as
The
well.
microphone, sorry.
And then you guys have the clarifying, right? So do
Yes.
we remember there's the two, there's the shampoo 2 and shampoo 3. Do we remember which one is more clarifying? 3. So that's the one that's going to pull out some chlorine, any minerals that are deposited, and then shampoo 2 is a little less clarifying, so more for like the product buildup that you would get.
So if you were to do it before perm,
Yep. So you
Yeah.
want, it depends on the guest. Which one you feel like. I usually just go for the shampoo 3.
Yeah.
Just to make sure like there's nothing left behind, like a better canvas for myself.
so it's not necessarily going to dry it out or anything like that. It's just going to remove more buildup.
Right. You do want to use a conditioner that's going to give back.
It's good to
Like,
do like right
is-
before a deep conditioner too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is going to pull out a lot of that moisture, but it's really good. I usually use the clarifier 3. or
You just
shampoo 3.
reminded me too. I don't know if I said back to PM shines. You can use that right after a perm or a relaxer too. I don't know if I mentioned that. So yeah, usually that's a that's a no-go for color, but you can use it the same day. Yeah.
So the rule of thumb is when you shampoo for perm, you don't use conditioner before.
Yep.
So when you shampoo with shampoo 3, what does your product line have that, like I used to use Insecure a lot before perm.
Just
or
to give it like a
before-
little slip when you're rolling the
try to even
perm.
out the porosity a little
Yeah.
bit, and so that I can comb it and
Yeah.
and it really
The Awapui Moisture Mist is one
I-
to use for
that's
that.
what I
Yep.
thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, it's perfect for that because it doesn't close down the cuticle too much on you, but just makes it able to comb through and roll that perm. Yep. And then yeah, I think they had the moisture line out there.
Yep. And then they have the color care.
I think it was just Ultimate Color Repair.
Oh, just ultimate.
Could be wrong. Yeah.
All right. So then we have the moisture that you guys have this one.
yes, we do.
So this one is like moisture. So it's going to give you your hair back hydration that it needs. And there's a shampoo, there's a treatment, and there's the moisture mist, which is actually my favorite product. Do you guys have that one? It's like the spray.
Is it a
Yes.
So you guys all need to buy that before you leave for summer because it's an amazing product to have like in your beach bag. If you
Yeah,
have a
take that to the
sunburn, you can spray it on your sunburn and feel a lot better. You can you can use it as a toner. You can use it to set your makeup. You can use it in so many different ways and spray it on your
It's
hair or
really-
skin.
Yeah, one
It's
of the-
awesome.
Definitely my favorite. And then there's the supercharged moisturizer treatment. So for somebody who has really, really dry hair, I always say like it's that hair that if you like rubbed it together, you might start a fire with. That hay hair. So the supercharged moisturizer is a really intense hydration. So that's like your deep conditioning system.
So a lot of times, like people will go straight for protein treatments when the hair also it needs a balance of protein and moisture, right? So a protein treatment would be like in the strength category or something that's rebuilding to the hair. But the protein that's what hair is made out of. But think of it like a little spine that puts your hair together and gives it strength. But the moisture is kind of like the insulation and the padding on that spine. So if you just have protein, like if you're just a little skeleton and you fall down the stairs, what'll happen? You're going to break all your bones, right? The hair is going to be really brittle. So it needs both protein and moisture. If you just have protein, the hair gets really brittle and dry and can actually even break easier, right? So that supercharged moisture treatment is perfect. If somebody's got enough protein, their hair's not necessarily chemically damaged anymore, but it's damaged from lack of moisture, just from their flat iron or curling iron or just existing in New England. It'll dry out your hair.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just saying, if you have dead virgin hair, could you use it on that?
Definitely dead virgin hair. Yep, it's great for that. Yeah, and then I'm going to grab, before I leave, I have a bunch of more of these little books. I'll grab some more so you guys can have them and look through them. But make sure you guys are really using those products on people.
I know with a bunch of other product lines, they prefer you to not cherry pick between their products, like the moisture mist with like the color repair or something like that. How does Cosmetology usually feel about that?
You can intermix any of them, yeah. Like we have different brands within John Paul Mitchell Systems. A lot of salons carry a little of everything. Some will only carry the Paul Mitchell brand. Some will only carry Tea Tree. We leave it up to the salon to kind of pick and choose because people always have their favorites. But you can mix any of them together and it'll be fine. You just wouldn't want to do two opposite things, like a smoothing product and a volumizing product. That's when it gets a little dicey.
So really, is Regis and Cosmetology, are they the exact same thing?
What was that?
Regis and Cosmetology, is that like almost the exact same thing?
What do you mean by that?
With their products?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have pretty similar products. Like most do. The names might be a little bit different. Like we have like a quick slip, which is like a fast drying product. They have the same. They probably have something similar to it in their line. Just might be called something different.
I just got confused over the
And just remember, like everything says right under the name on the bottle what it's meant for. It's meant to just be as simple and easy to use. Like she said, quick slip. It's a fast